It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars show. This week, Simon Pegg, of both Star Trek and Star Wars fame, says that Star Wars fandom is the worst. I kind of would have to agree. Made headlines on a lot of different publications. We'll dive into the article from Variety, and I'll share my thoughts. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about Force Dyads, a concept introduced in The Rise of Skywalker, and some speculation that perhaps we've actually seen a Force Dyad earlier in the storytelling. My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, is brought to you by the EMBARK science fiction space opera series. 7 books in the series, available in ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook. In a future where flight culture has replaced car culture, 5 friends discover the key to humanity's survival among the stars in the middle of a global evacuation. Go to Amazon.com or to mynerdworld.net and pick up your preferred copy of the EMBARK science fiction series.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now, you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Really glad that you're here once again as we talk about all things Star Wars. You can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or if you happen to be listening on YouTube, of course, you can leave a comment up on YouTube as well. We do have some fantastic listener feedback to dive into this week. I know that this gets talked about, but honestly, it doesn't get talked about enough, and that is the world building that George Lucas created with his science fiction series. I put on The Empire Strikes Back yesterday. I've been working through it yesterday and today. Had it kind of on in the background. I was doing a few other things and off and on between watching some other shows. And the moment the film started and we get to the Rebel base on Hoth, I was struck by, once again, just how fantastic the world building in Star Wars is. I mean, here we have this universe created a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and to George Lucas's credit, and people have been pointing this out since the original Star Wars movie was released, what George did in creating this lived-in universe really did ground it in a sense of reality that we could all understand, even though this was a place of complete and total science fiction that we could never go and visit until now, Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. But beyond that, I mean, just the fact that George risked so much to go and create this fantastic world that nobody had seen before and then build everything off of that, it's nothing short of miraculous. I mean, it's one of the things that obviously makes Star Wars so special. And it's one of the reasons why I continue to really appreciate more and more the prequels. I always loved the prequels, but the world building in the prequels as well, I mean, really took what happened in Star Wars and just expanded upon it. George was so limited in his ability to craft the world as he completely envisioned it, that when you got the original Star Wars, it benefited from that, from a minimal budget and not having the ability of CGI, having to use models, to really be limited in how he was going to go and show his world. And of course, he went and made adjustments with the special editions, which I love so much. But I just, again, just as I get into the topics this week, that's something that really stuck out to me. And it doesn't get talked about as much as it used to, but the world building in Star Wars is just still continues to be utterly fantastic. Just amazing. Immediately when you put on any Star Wars movie, you are transported to this world, and you completely buy into it. All right, let's go ahead and get into the topics this week. Got a couple of items that I found. It's been really, really slow on news as of late. There's been more discussions around Taika Waititi's movie. When is it filming? Early next year. When is it going to be released? Taika Waititi himself had come out and said that he wasn't even sure it was going to get made. San Diego Comic-Con is going on right now, and because we now have Star Wars Celebration and the D23 convention with Disney, we don't get the same types of announcements that we typically have in the past at a large event like San Diego Comic-Con. So most of the details and information that have come out of this convention have been focused on end of things, specifically the High Republic, which I still have not ventured into yet one day. I know I keep saying it, I will. As a matter of fact, we were at Walmart yesterday, and I happened to wander off, and there's those aisles towards the front of the store where the registers are, where they have just a lot of really oddball items. Typically, you still find baseball cards there, Pokemon cards are there, you see some knockoff Funko Pops, this kind of stuff, figures for athletes, and they do have some comic books there. And I was just kind of poking around, and I found a set of High Republic comics. And for a moment, I was actually going to go and purchase them. And I'm like, no, when I wade into the High Republic, I really want to start off with the starting point of the novels. And then if I'm still interested in finding out more, I will, I'll go and look at some of the smaller publishing efforts. The other news that came out this week was also the casting of the girl who will be leading, who will be the leading character in the Acolyte. But this was information that we had reported as a rumor before on the show, so it's nothing really new. There were no further details on the Acolyte. Beyond that, there was a new trailer that dropped for Andor, which really only showed 2 new shots that weren't really worth bringing up. I mean, it was one of Cassian Andor walking, and then just another quick shot, I think, of a passing vehicle that we'd seen earlier in the trailer. Plus, there was some behind-the-scenes photos of the costumes in the show. But other than that, there has been very little in the way of news. And I imagine in the coming weeks, as we reach the end of July, heading into August, and the promotion of Andor kicks in, there'll be a lot more to talk about with regard to that show, which I'm really excited for. My expectations are high, and I know that I'm putting myself in a position where I can be disappointed again. But as I've mentioned on the show before, Andor has been worked on since the beginning of Disney Plus. I mean, since they first started to talk about creating Star Wars content, Andor was one of the first projects they started working on. And they also didn't utilize the volume nearly as much as the more recent series of Star Wars shows on Disney Plus. There was a lot of location shooting going on for Andor. And the creative talent of Tony Gilroy, who came in and cleaned up Rogue One, really has me, again, incredibly excited, and my expectations really high. I think what we're going to get with Andor is a show that will show in a way we haven't really seen much of yet of the Empire really blossoming into this massive threat to the galaxy at the same time as the rebellion is growing. We've seen a little bit of this. Kyle, my 15-year-old, has been watching The Bad Batch with me again, which been really enjoying this on basically probably a third watch now. And we're towards the end of the series. They've destroyed Kamino now. Spoiler alert. And they've left Crosshair behind as they are leaving. As a matter of fact, I think that was the final episode. Now that I think about it, that was the season finale. So you did see the beginnings of the Empire forming with the changeover from the clones to the recruited stormtroopers. But Andor, I really do think, is going to give us more of a larger view of the Empire coming into full power as the rebellion grows. And that trailer just really, really struck a chord with me. So I'm super excited for it. And we don't have to wait too long, sometime towards the end of August, right? We'll get the Andor series, and I know we'll be getting a lot more in terms of content and images and trailers that we'll certainly be discussing here on My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. All right, let's go ahead and get into some of the news this week.
This is not going to go the way you think.
As Luke Skywalker gives me an opportunity to take a sip of my coffee from my Yoda mug, Simon Pegg has become a franchise master in recent years, according to the article in front of me from Variety, having appeared in the likes of Star Trek, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, and Doctor Who. During a recent appearance on Sirius XM's Jim and Sam radio show, Pegg was asked what franchise has the hardest fans to please. It didn't take long for the actor to deliver his answer, Star Wars. And he said this doing that thing with my fingers. To be honest, as someone who kind of was, kicked off about the prequels when they came out, the Star Wars fan base really seems to be the worst kind of toxic at the moment, Pegg said. I'm probably being very controversial saying that. Now, Pegg noted that he himself was once a toxic Star Wars fan, as he contributed to the backlash against Jar Jar Binks actor Ahmed Best when The Phantom Menace opened in theaters. Pegg has previously said that he is ashamed for contributing to the backlash. Controversy around Jar Jar Binks led Ahmed Best to consider ending his own life. Now, that wasn't controversy from what Simon Pegg said. That was just the overall controversy of how much unnecessary criticism that Ahmed Best took of that character. I've apologized for the things I said about Jar Jar Binks. Pegg told the podcast host, because of course there was a blanking actor involved. He was getting a lot of flack, and it was a human being, and because it got a lot of hate, he suffered, and I feel terrible about being part of that. For Pegg, Star Trek fandom is the exact opposite of Star Wars fandom. I find the Star Trek fans have always been very, very inclusive. Star Trek's about diversity. It has been since 1966. It always was, the actor said. There's no sort of like, oh, you're suddenly being woke, Pegg added. No, Star Trek was woke from the beginning. This is massively progressive, he says. Star Wars, suddenly, there's a little bit more diversity, and everyone's kicking off about it, and it's really sad. Now, Pegg had a small prosthetic-laden role as Unkar Plutt in Star Wars The Force Awakens. Now, I'm not going to turn this into some sort of political rant by any stretch. I tend to disagree a little bit with what Simon Pegg has to say with regard to the controversies around the wokeness. Unfortunately, when it comes to the discourse within the Star Wars fandom, there's a lot of varying degrees. And too many times people will go and criticize an aspect of Star Wars, and other individuals will immediately go and put you just don't like it because it's a woke label on it, when in reality it had nothing to do with that. It was more about the individual playing a character and the acting job that was being done, or particular choices that are being made. That being said, there is also a portion of the fandom that does believe that Star Wars has injected too much political correctness into its content. And that goes beyond Star Wars as well. The issue that I have is when it's not done naturally. I have zero problem with choices of actors or actresses in stories, particular storylines. If it's done to the benefit of the story. Too many times we've seen, and I'm not necessarily even talking about Star Wars, I'm just talking about just content creation in general. We've seen an injection of a progressive ideal, or what people call woke or political correctness, into storytelling just for the sake of wedging it in there as an attempt to do some sort of virtue signaling. What's fascinating to me about that aspect is a lot of times you will see the very communities and demographics that the content was placed into the creation for actually push back on that because they see it as being very blatant pandering. And I think that we will see a return to what benefits the story most, while still being diverse of characters, right, and backgrounds. I think we will see a return to a focus of just good storytelling, and if it matches for the story and makes sense for the story, then we'll go and include it. Because the public and the fandom aren't as dumb as I think a lot of creators within intellectual properties. I don't think they give the fandom nearly enough credit. And they feel like they have to overserve certain things to try to appeal to certain demographics, and it's to their own detriment. Now, beyond that, in terms of the toxicity, which we've talked about quite a bit on this show within Star Wars, I don't see that going away anytime soon, apart from an aging out of a certain demographic of the fandom. A big reason why Star Wars has become so toxic is, one, there is such a love for this franchise, and especially among fans of a certain age who feel as if the franchise has betrayed them because it doesn't feel like the Star Wars that they're used to, or for reasons I mentioned before, there is that element of they feel like it's woke for the sake of being woke instead of having it happen naturally within the storytelling. The ability to go and make money off of YouTube, I think, has perpetuated this in a disastrous way of bringing about the negativity, because unfortunately the negativity, often drives a lot of clicks to stories that people may not have been interested in. Even in my thinking about doing the show this week, I was interested in the Simon Pegg article because this topic fascinates me, not just from a Star Wars fandom pop culture aspect, but with the weekly radio show that I do on Twin Cities News Talk here in Minneapolis. It also aligns with the state of our politics today for all the very same reasons. The ability that we have to instantly put out a thought, any random thought that pops into our head on social networking platforms, and a lot of people who do it anonymously, really perpetuates a lot of the negativity, not just in pop culture, but in sports and also in politics as well. My best friend who I did the show with, as I mentioned here, who unfortunately suddenly passed away about a month ago, as Drew would say on the show, one way that we could get rid of a lot of this is take away the ability for people to be anonymous on Twitter. A lot of people hide behind their anonymous Twitter handles, and I'm very much of the opinion that whether we're talking about fandoms going to conventions or whether you're talking about politics and going out to political events, campaign stops, and things of that nature out in public, most people wouldn't go and get in the faces of the individuals that they're more than willing to go and criticize, be it politicians or actors or actresses, like they would anonymously on a social media platform. People just don't do that because most people are cowards. So unfortunately, because of that, I don't think that the toxicity is going away anytime soon. I do appreciate the fact that most of the social networking platforms do give you the opportunity to curate your own experience to where you can mute or block out those voices. And I know that's what I do. I curate my experience on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram so that, I'm following people that are, generally positive. It doesn't mean we have to always agree on everything, but at least they're positive and rational about these types of topics. All right, let's switch gears and get into a little bit more of the storytelling aspect of it and a little less of the real-world part of the Star Wars fandom.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
Rey really is like my favorite character. Especially in The Rise of Skywalker. Man, she's so fantastic in that movie. CBR has a very interesting piece that I thought you might like to hear about. The concept of a Force Dyad. Rather recent to Star Wars. However, some revisionists have pointed out that Obi-Wan and Anakin might be a dyad themselves. As Star Wars has expanded its universe, so too have the abilities available to Force users inside its canon, from Force-sensitive beings of far-flung alien races to unique abilities such as Cal Kestis has and his psychometry in the game. Jedi Fallen Order, and the upcoming Jedi Survivor. One of the more notable additions to canon in the last decade, however, has been the concept of the Force Dyad, a Sith concept that allows for stronger use of the Force and a great many unique abilities that are only accessible to the people contained therein. Though there is minimal evidence for it throughout the Star Wars series, recent entries, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, seem to heavily imply that Star Wars is moving forward, making the titular Jedi part of a dyad with his former apprentice Anakin Skywalker. By sorting through elements in canon of Star Wars, Anakin especially in the Star Wars Secrets of the Sith canon reference guide, many fans have begun to create a revised theory of the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Looking at the established members of the Force Dyads could help determine the correctness of this theory, and looking at canon and beyond may help establish just how close fans are to confirming two of Star Wars' major protagonists as members of a dyad. Now, in order to determine whether Kenobi and Skywalker form a Force Dyad, one first needs to establish precisely what a Force Dyad is. Having just been added to canon officially in 2019's The Rise of Skywalker, the Force Dyad that is confirmed to exist in canon is between Rey and Kylo Ren. The two were linked as a result of Palpatine's interference through the Force, forming a link in thoughts, feelings, and use of the Force. As the Force Dyad is a dark side ability, a strong dark side Force user must link the two. It's also the inspiration for the Star Wars Rule of Two in new canon, as it was believed that linking the master and apprentice would make the two stronger. And this is really one of the aspects that I do truly love about The Rise of Skywalker, was this concept being introduced that might be new to Star Wars canon in what is now the final, so far, theatrically released film, but at the same time is wholly believable and fits into what we know so far. I just appreciate J.J. Abrams, the story group, going and adding something new to the final film in the Skywalker saga. I just thought the concept, and Chris Terrio, I just thought the concept was unique. It really cemented that special relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren that had been speculated on so much between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It's one of the reasons why I love that film so much. Now, the article goes on to say, Force Dyads give multiple abilities to the users, and this is the easiest way to determine who is part of it. Members must evidence sharing of dreams or visions through the Force, Force healing, an exclusively dyadic ability, although one has to wonder about Grogu, since he's been able to Force heal, right? The ability to sense the other members' next actions, so much so that they can fight back to impromptu. So they can fight back-to-back impromptu. Parts of both light and dark sides of the Force, and occasionally the ability to pass physical objects through time and space using the Force. Though these are not guarantees of Force Dyads, some, such as Force healing and the passing of physical objects, are guarantees of being part of a Force Dyad. Interestingly, Force healing is described as inherent to Force Dyads, but it also is aligned to the light side of the Force. This could further prop up the idea that both members must have a mix of light and dark sides of the Force within them. Though doubtless added to the last movie in order to make Kylo and Rey's link more special, the Force Dyad nonetheless has interesting implications for canon. Firstly, and here you go, Grogu of the Mandalorian fame as a result of these aspects, a part of the Force Dyad. Though the other abilities are not demonstrated by the young Force user, his use of Force healing at the end of the first season necessitates that he is part of one. His attempts to kill those whom he views as antagonists to his father figure at various points further confirms that Grogu is doubtless part of a Force Dyad, even if there is no way to determine the other half. Now, regarding Obi-Wan, his fit is in more of a gray area. He and Anakin have not demonstrated Force healing or passing of physical objects to one another. As such, they are only confirmed to share visions through the Force as seen in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Possesses the ability to sense each other's moves at various points in the canon, and contain both light and dark sides of the Force. Confirmed for Obi-Wan in the canon story of Kenobi's Shadow. Though this doesn't confirm Obi-Wan as part of a Force Dyad, it does indicate if he is part of one, it is with Anakin Skywalker. Though not confirmed in canon explicitly, the implication is certainly present that Anakin and Obi-Wan are in a Force Dyad. Though there are certainly areas up for debate, the direct confirmation of the two is unlikely to take place, as both have aspects that have only been teased in canon. Though fans may never know whether Obi-Wan and Anakin are part of a Force Dyad, the possibility adds a deeply interesting fold into the Star Wars canon. And I hope that the storytelling moving forward, especially when we get storytelling that goes beyond Episode 9, that this is a concept they tap into. We've been living with the Sith rule of two now for, since the start of the storytelling. The Dyad aspect of it being the light side version of the Sith rule of two could really provide for some fascinating and unique storytelling. Envisioning an individual searching for their other half to form the Dyad. That could be in such a fashion of an individual seeking more power, in which case they can't achieve it until they find their equal, their Dyad in the Force. And, subsequently, going the other direction, an individual who is seeking to further their own ability for the light side of the Force to do good could then go and be seeking the other side of themselves, of the Dyad. I just feel like we could really, really benefit in some fantastic and unique storytelling by expanding upon this concept that, again, I'm so thankful was included and introduced in The Rise of Skywalker. What do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, let's get into your listener feedback this week in response to last week's episode about Star Wars needing a singular creative vision. Jay Caval 93 writes, the franchise needs a great screenwriter, like Lawrence Kasdan, he comes to mind. And director, why not someone like Kevin Smith or Robert Rodriguez? Bryce Dallas Howard has been another name mentioned. Star Wars made the country forget about the 70s era issues, Vietnam, Watergate, economic uncertainty, in the sense the franchise was the first postmodern myth. It was never supposed to be a Freudian psychodrama or hardcore sci-fi like 2001 or Star Trek. Just a great fun time at the movies. Spinning off of that a bit, but going a different direction, and I think I mentioned this on recent shows, I still can't help but speculate that Top Gun Maverick is going to have a massive impact on the storytelling that we get in theaters very, very soon. That film, to me, really did spark the reset of individuals going to the box office and what moviegoers want to see in their action storytelling. I feel that storytelling taking place within Top Gun Maverick, as I've said, far exceeds the storytelling that we've been getting as of late in the latest phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I just feel like has been entirely too convoluted. I appreciate the fact that a movie like Top Gun Maverick, while not a fantasy, still does have and play by its own set of rules and has a lot of familiarity with The Force Awakens and A New Hope. But most of all, it was just simple, straightforward storytelling and a fantastic adventure. And I still contend that being said, I was reminded of that, Jay Caval 93, because you mentioned what Star Wars did in the 70s, being released in the late 70s, and taking individuals' minds away from the issues that we're facing with here in the country. And we're in a very similar aspect right now. I think the Top Gun Maverick really did fill that void and was as successful and continues to be as successful as it is because it did provide an escapism from the realities here in America and, just worldwide right now. I also think that content creators are going to be looking to tap into the movie-going audience that is clearly ready and willing to go back to the theater to escape all of this. I wish that we had a Star Wars movie, in the pipeline coming out soon that could do that. But, unfortunately, in my opinion, Disney and Lucasfilm have just been far too focused on pumping out live-action content and not nearly as focused on the movie side of things. And I understand why, because of what happened with the pandemic and Bob Iger before he bailed off, and this desire to pause the theatrical releases of Star Wars because of the backlash of what took place with the sequel trilogy and specifically Solo, which I think they overreacted to. They wanted to take a pause on this, but now I think that was a mistake because they could really be taking advantage of the public wanting to go back to the theaters. All right, friend of the show, Miranda Alicia writes, Star Wars also needs to have the freedom to grow and become whatever it needs and wants to be and not just try to please everyone or to be tied down by mandates and preconceived notions that will only hold it back. It needs to have the freedom to go beyond its comfort zone. She goes on to say, by the way, I've actually been doing a story for the past couple of months about Rey and Ben, talking about the future of Star Wars, and this took place a couple of days before Star Wars Celebration in the Kenobi series. Now I'm beginning to think about a follow-up. Awesome. Man, I love creativity, and when people are inspired to create. I've had to take over, all the responsibilities of the weekly show that I do that pays the bills. Because of that, I'm now working much harder than I did before, just because there was another individual that I was working with. And while I find it all very rewarding, it's taken away my ability and free time to go and write the stories that I've been writing. I'm very thankful that I wrapped up my EMBARK science fiction space opera series before all of this, I was sort of handed this situation, and there's no going back or changing it, unfortunately. I wish I could. That being said, I miss that other creative outlet, and I have started a book 8 in the series, actually to be a whole new trilogy, and I do intend to get back to writing once I can kind of figure out a schedule that will permit me to continue the writing process while not getting in the way of focusing on doing the prep for the show that I do right now. But that's awesome, Miranda, that you're working on content like that. That's really cool. Love to hear from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment up on YouTube. And before I let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about my EMBARK Science Fiction Space Opera series. If you want to support my nerd world, this is how you do it. You can treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with science fiction written for adults, but great for ages 11 plus. Available in hardcover, ebook, paperback, and audio book at Amazon.com or at mynerdworld.net. In EMBARK Book 1, Katha Morrow is about to discover her past holds the key to humanity's future. Katha trained to one day travel to the distant worlds now within reach. Haunted by the passing of her beloved aerospace engineer father 1 year earlier, Katha is stunned when she receives a cryptic message leading her and fellow pilot Taft Guardia to a shocking discovery. Her excitement quickly turns to fear when they learn an industrial accident inside one of the largest military and civilian spacecraft factories has set off a catastrophic chain of events. When war erupts during the global evacuation, Katha realizes the significance of what her father left behind, and so does the enemy. Interstellar travel isn't what she imagined, as it's now up to Katha, Taft, and a ragtag squadron of pilots to stop the threat to humanity's future among the stars before it's too late. The future of science fiction adventure starts here, and I hope that you will head on over to Amazon.com or mynerdworld.net and pick up your preferred version of the EMBARK science fiction space opera series. If you like your sci-fi space opera epic filled with romance and action, then EMBARK is perfect for you. Again, Amazon.com, search for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice, or at mynerdworld.net. Thank you so much for taking some of your valuable time and listening to this week's episode. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and of course, subscribe to whatever podcasting platform that you currently use. We'll be back again next week, and I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.